Picture the most powerful man on earth. He commands the largest army in the known world. He administers justice across 3 continents. 30 million people live or die by his decisions. His word is law. His face is on the currency. His name will be remembered for 2,000 years. Now, picture that same man. Before dawn, in a cold tent on the frozen frontier of the Roman Empire, far from home, surrounded by war and plague and the evidence of everything that can go wrong when human beings are given power over other human beings. Writing in his journal. Not for publication, not for posterity, not to be remembered or admired or quoted for 20 centuries. Just for himself. Trying one more morning to be better than he was the day before. His name was Marcus Aurelius. He ruled Rome from 161 to 180 AD, and the private journal he left behind, the book we now call Meditations, is the most intimate, most honest, most unexpectedly human document any head of state has ever produced. It is not a book of answers. It is a book of a man in daily, humble, relentless struggle with himself. And that struggle is exactly yours. We live in a culture that worships achievement and is quietly terrified of the inner life. We measure success in outputs, titles earned, money accumulated, problems solved, boxes checked. We have built extraordinary systems for managing the external world, and we have left the internal one almost entirely unexamined. Which is why so many people who have achieved everything they set out to achieve arrive at 50 or 55 and feel not triumphant, not fulfilled, but strangely, inexplicably hollow. The career is real, the house is real, the accomplishments are real, and yet something essential is missing. Something that no promotion can supply and no vacation can restore. Something that lives deeper than achievement and cannot be purchased or performed or optimized into existence. Marcus Aurelius knew this feeling intimately. He did not choose to be emperor. He was adopted, groomed from childhood for a role he never sought and, by his own private account, never entirely wanted. He would have preferred a life of philosophy and quiet contemplation. Instead, he got the weight of civilization. And what he did with that weight, how he carried it, how he processed it, how he returned again and again to the fundamental questions of how a human being should live, is one of the most instructive stories in the history of the examined life. To understand the Meditations, you need to understand what they are not. They are not a polished philosophical treatise. They are not a self-help manual written for public consumption. They are not the emperor performing wisdom for an admiring audience. They are a private conversation between Marcus Aurelius and Marcus Aurelius. Written in Greek, not Latin, the language of Roman power, as if to create a small, protected space where the emperor could disappear and the man could think. He wrote them in fragments, in the middle of military campaigns, in the intervals between audiences and decisions, and the endless machinery of governing an empire. Some entries are a single line. Some are extended meditations on a single idea, circled and returned to and worried at like a stone in the hand. And what he was worrying at, always, in 100 different formulations, from 100 different angles, was the same essential question. How do I become the person I want to be, given that I am, every day, the person I am? Not how do I appear better, not how do I perform wisdom for the people watching. How do I actually become it, in the quiet, unobserved, unrecorded moments when no one is watching and the only witness is my own conscience? That question is ancient. That question is yours.
Let me walk you through the great pillars of Marcus's philosophy, the ones he returned to again and again across the 10 books of the Meditations. The first, and the one he considered most foundational, was the discipline of perception. Marcus had a phrase he used constantly, in variation after variation. The obstacle is the way. The impediment to action advances action. Now, most people read this as motivational advice: push through the hard thing, embrace the challenge. And yes, there is that. But Marcus meant something far more specific and far more radical. He meant that the way you perceive a thing determines entirely what that thing is capable of doing to you. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The event is neutral. The interpretation is everything. Someone criticizes your work. 2 responses are possible. The first: this is an attack on my value as a person, evidence that I am not enough, a threat to the image I have constructed and defended for decades. The second: this is information, possibly useful, possibly not, but mine to evaluate, not theirs to impose. The same event, 2 completely different realities, determined entirely by the story the mind tells about what happened. Marcus came back to this again and again because he lived it in the most extreme possible circumstances: plague, military defeat, betrayal by people he trusted, the death of children. He lost several. And in every case, the question he returned to in his journal was not, "Why is this happening to me?" but "What is the most useful thing my mind can do with this?" Not denial, not toxic positivity, just the fierce, trained refusal to let circumstances write the story of his inner life. The second great pillar is what the Stoics called Amor Fati, love of fate. Not acceptance of fate, not resigned tolerance of fate. In emphasis, love of it. Marcus wrote, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together." This is one of the most demanding ideas in the history of philosophy, and I want to sit with it for a moment, because it is easy to misread as passivity, as the philosophy of a man who has given up, who has stopped trying to change what can be changed. But Marcus was not passive. He fought wars, he reformed laws, he rebuilt institutions, he acted on the world with everything he had. Amor Fati was not about the future, it was about the past and present. It was the practice of, once something has happened, once the thing is real and fixed and unchangeable, choosing to love it. Not because it was good, not because it didn't hurt, but because resistance to what is already real is the single most exhausting, most life-consuming waste of human energy that exists. Think about how much of your inner life, right now, today, is occupied by resistance to things that are already done, decisions already made, words already spoken, paths already taken or not taken, years already lived in a particular way. The past is not asking for your approval. It has already happened, and every hour you spend fighting it is an hour you are not present for the life that is happening now. Amor Fati says, take everything that has happened, every scar and loss and wrong turn and accumulated regret, and treat it not as evidence of failure, but as the precise, irreplaceable material out of which your life is made. You are not in spite of your history. You are made of it. The third pillar, and the one that surprises people most when they encounter it in a Roman emperor, is radical humility. Marcus Aurelius was surrounded every day of his adult life by people who told him he was extraordinary, who deferred to him, flattered him, competed for his favor, who would have said anything, believed anything, performed anything required to remain in proximity to the most powerful man in the world. And in his private journal, the one place where no one was performing because no one was watching, he wrote this: "How much more harmful are the consequences of anger and grief than the circumstances that arouse them in us?" And this: "When you wake up in the morning,
Tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. That is not the journal of a man intoxicated by his own power. That is the journal of a man trying, with genuine effort and genuine humility, to not be destroyed by the constant friction of other human beings. Marcus reminded himself daily that the people who frustrated him were not enemies. They were people, confused, frightened, self-interested, doing their best with whatever understanding they managed to accumulate, exactly as he was. And the practice of holding that truth, not as a performance of magnanimity for the watching crowd, but as a private, daily, difficult discipline of the mind, is one of the most countercultural things a person can do in a world that constantly invites us towards judgment, resentment, and the comfortable superiority of believing that other people are the problem. Marcus knew he was the problem too, frequently, and he wrote about it with a frankness that is almost shocking. I have not arrived. Entry after entry, year after year, the most powerful man in the world, writing to himself, I have not arrived. That is not weakness. That is the most honest thing a human being can say.
There is a theme in the meditations that I want to return to, one that weaves through every book, every entry, like a thread you keep finding no matter where you reach into the text. The theme of the present moment. Marcus was obsessed with the present, not in the way that modern mindfulness culture talks about presence, as relaxation, as stress relief, as a pleasant experience to be cultivated and enjoyed, as a moral imperative. He wrote, "Confine yourself to the present," and "the present moment always will have been." That second one, sit with it. The present moment always will have been. Whatever you do right now, this conversation, this decision, this act of attention or inattention, it will always have happened. It is being written permanently into the record of your life, whether you are conscious of it or not. The meeting you attended while thinking about something else. The dinner where you were physically present and mentally somewhere distant. The conversation with someone you love where you were listening at 20% because 40% was on a work problem and 40% was on your phone. Those moments are not retrievable, but the next one is, and the one after that. And the practice Marcus built his entire inner life around was simply this one, fully, whatever this one is. Not the next meeting, not the unresolved problem, not the version of yourself you are still trying to construct for an audience that may not even exist. This one. Now, practically, because philosophy without practice is just beautiful noise, and Marcus Aurelius, who had less free time than almost any human being who ever lived, was deeply practical. First, begin a private journal and make it honest. Not a gratitude list, not a record of accomplishments, a real journal, the kind where you write what you actually think, not what you wish you thought, where you name the thing you are avoiding, where you ask yourself, in writing, the question you have been circling around for months without landing on directly. Writing changes thinking. It forces a precision that the mind, left to its own comfortable vagueness, will always avoid. Marcus wrote to himself every morning not because he had answers, but because the act of writing forced him to find better questions. Start with this. What am I telling myself about my life right now, and how much of it is actually true? Second, practice the view from above. This is a specific Stoic meditation that Marcus returned to regularly. Close your eyes. Imagine yourself rising slowly above your current situation, above the argument, the anxiety, the problem that feels enormous and urgent and all-consuming. Rise above your city, above your country, above the earth itself until you can see it, small, blue, impossibly beautiful,
suspended in silence. And then ask, from this perspective, what is actually large? What is actually permanent? What is actually worth the energy I am spending on it? Marcus used this practice not to make his problems feel insignificant. They were not insignificant, but to right-size them, to restore the perspective that the noise and urgency of daily life constantly distorts. 3 minutes, that is all it takes. The view from above. Third, at the end of each day, ask Marcus's 3 questions. Where did I act from fear rather than reason? Where did I let someone else's behavior determine the quality of my inner life? And where did I fail to be present, fully, genuinely present for what was actually happening? Not in judgment, in curiosity. The way a good coach reviews a performance, not to punish, but to understand, to learn, to do slightly better tomorrow. Marcus failed at his own standards constantly. He wrote about it with almost painful regularity, and he came back the next morning and tried again. That is the practice, not perfection, return. Fourth, choose one relationship to bring your full attention to this week. Not all of them, just one. The person in your life who most often receives the distracted, depleted, going through the motions version of you. Give them something different this week. Not more time necessarily, more presence. Eyes up, phone down. The question you actually want to ask instead of the polite one. The thing you have been meaning to say that keeps getting deferred to a better moment that never quite arrives. Marcus believed that our relationships are the primary theater in which our philosophy either lives or dies. You can write the most beautiful journal entries in the world, but if the person across the table from you is receiving a fraction of your attention, the philosophy has not yet reached your life. I want to close where we began, in a cold tent before dawn on the frozen frontier of the Roman world. The emperor has been awake for an hour. Outside, the logistics of war are assembling themselves, the sounds of an army, the weight of decisions that will cost lives, regardless of which ones he makes. And he writes. Not because he has figured it out, not because he has arrived at the peace and equanimity that his philosophy describes, but because he is trying, because the trying, the daily, humble, never completed trying, is itself the life well lived. He writes, "You have seen those things. Look also at these. Do not disturb yourself. Make yourself all simplicity." Make yourself all simplicity. Not all achievement, not all efficiency, not all performance and output and optimized living. All simplicity. All presence, all honesty about who you are and what you value, and how far the distance still is between the person you are and the person you are trying to become. That distance is not failure. That distance is the entire point. Here is the question Marcus Aurelius asked himself every single morning of his adult life, in a cold tent, in a marble palace, in the last weeks before his death. Am I being the person I want to be, right now, in this moment, with no audience and no applause and nothing to prove to anyone? Take that question with you today. And if the answer is not yet, then tomorrow morning is waiting, patient and permanent, and full of the only thing that has ever mattered, another chance. I'll see you in the next one.